In accordance with Wisconsin's open meetings law, the required public notice of this meeting ran in the Saturday, May 17, 2025 issue of the Waukesha Freeman was posted on the LCCA website and the entry doors of both school campuses. The LCCA mission is to train the minds and improve the hearts of young people through a content-rich classical education in the liberal arts and sciences with instruction in the principles of moral character and civic virtue. So please rise and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can you let the record show, all board members will be in attendance in a couple minutes. Georgia called and she's on her way, so be here in about 5 minutes. Is there any objection to the minutes from the April 16th, 2025 meeting or this agenda? No objections, so the agenda is approved.
The minutes from the May meeting?
Pardon?
The minutes from the May meeting?
Oh, or the May 12th meeting?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, same question, any objection to the minutes of the May 12th meeting? No. Okay, no objection. Agenda and notes approved. For our next item was board response to public comments. We really only had one brief comment last week, and that was from Erica, governance model, which we covered and we will talk a little bit about again today. And then one campus, you had mentioned an idea, which we will talk about in our one campus section. And then our only public comment for this week, it looks like, is from Maureen. So Maureen, you have the floor.
Thank you. So to begin, I just want to say that we each in this room continue to have that shared purpose of seeing the school succeed and keeping the enrichment going, the students in it. This cause, I think, goes without saying, but I want to say it anyway, it's bigger than any one of us. And while many remain excited about the One Campus project, I want to be very blunt in saying that there are two hindrances that stand in the way of the project's success. One is a perceived lack of trust in spending money responsibly, and the second is the absence of a diversified, skilled committee for the project. How can the board expect parents and community partners to continue to make financial contributions when over $450,000 was spent and we don't have anything tangible to show for that? Typically, if someone fails at achieving a desired outcome after spending a large amount of other people's money, there are consequences. Instead, it seems like this large donation from a William Fund is being used to pay for a failed outcome that occurred with the board and administration. If the $450,000 plus was still around, we would be that much further ahead. I don't want to be stuck on the problem, so I kind of want to go forward. I am wondering though, what was gained from spending that money? Back on the March 19th meeting, there was a discussion about some type of reusable value. I'm not yet clear what that is. What process is currently in place to make sure money is judiciously spent by the board? As we move forward with our mutual interest to see this school succeed, the question to pose is how can we reestablish trust, continue to get more funding, and keep community support? There's a thought for that. Would the board be open to create a committee consisting of parents skilled in the areas of business, real estate, and negotiation, so that when a property or an opportunity, or maybe even exploring grants, those ideas arise, it is thoroughly explored by a number of people? Some potential benefits of having a committee might include the following. There would be more critical thinking. It would create multi-level accountability. The board would be better equipped with needed input and insight from parents. And also, such a committee would provide that any money connected with LCCA would be judiciously spent. Plus, the board wouldn't have to handle this project alone. And it's doubtful the school would survive another failed attempt. Clearly, the future of LCCA depends on trust, proper funding, and ongoing community support. Having better accountability and a properly organized committee would allow for those better outcomes to happen, and it would reestablish trust in how money is spent. I just want to thank you for your time and considering those comments.
I want to thank you for finishing at 2 minutes and 52 seconds. You were perfect. I didn't need to stop you. So thank you for your comments, Maria, and we'll take that under advisement and consideration. I'll try to respond next month to that. So thank you for your suggestion. All right. Our next item is the President's Report, which I don't have a lot here. I think a lot of it will be incorporated in some of our other discussions today. But just two quick things. I just wanted to say graduation. I thought that was absolutely a terrific event, especially for the first time. And I know you didn't do it alone. You had help with your team there, but I just wanted to congratulate you on a great first ceremony. It seemed like you'd done it many times before. And then the other thing I just wanted to note for our group and then for our community too, is we have our strategic planning meeting June 16th and 17th. We did have that one prior. Some people said they weren't aware that it happened. It was noticed, but I just, since it was sort of, not a normal cadence, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that was there. The one on the 12th was more kind of going over these Clifton Strengths Finder assessments. This will be more getting into the meat of the strategy.
Do you have a time on that?
It is all day. It's like 8 to 5. I don't know if you know what the times are.
I know it's 1 to 5 the second day.
Yeah, I think it's 8 or 8 to
I've got my calendar 8 to 5.
8 to 5?
Yeah.
So 8 to 5 Monday, 1 to
5 on
5
Tuesday.
the subsequent day.
Yeah.
So. Right. Hello, Georgia. So that's all I had. Margaret, you can go into the principal's report.
Okay, thank you.
So just starting with some positive highlights as I have been. This month was full of a lot of activity. The senior cap and gown assembly for the first time at East was a wonderful event where the seniors were here and were introduced and celebrated by all of the elementary kids with posters and banners, and they walked the halls through tunnels of students, and it was really great. We also hosted a Liberty Gala Volunteer Appreciation Breakfast at Wayland's in Oconomowoc, which was very well attended and a nice way to thank the volunteers who contributed to that event. Additionally, some special events. We had Principal for a day preceding the Liberty Gala. Thank you all for attending the gala. It was a wonderful event, and I have some statistics here of the results of that event, just the total number of guests, the auctionable silent and live item count, the total revenue, and just an idea of, on average, what we were receiving per person that attended. You can see a dip in attendance from 2024 to 2025, which we expected. The venue actually kind of forewarned us that all of their events were had decreased in numbers this year, so we had a little bit of a sense that that might be the case for us. But you can see the on average per person generosity remained about the same. Another difference in the overall revenue would be the Raise the Paddle, if you will, last event raised more in 2024 than it did in 2025. But we consider this Liberty Gala another huge success, and we're already strategically planning and trying to get creative for next year. So thank you again for your attendance and support at that. Additionally, we've closed out the athletics for 2025, which concludes our probationary status with the WIAA, so we're waiting to receive the official communication, but we have co-op opportunities lined up with University Lake School, and we'll be able to offer some of those additional athletic opportunities to our high school students through partnership with them this coming fall, next year. Some monthly updates. we're closing out the required drills, fire and safety drills that we've practiced through the course of the year. Again, the hiring season is still well underway, and we're excited that several, minimally about 20 faculty are intending to go to the Hillsdale Summer Conference, which they offer every year. There's 3 different sessions, kind of grouped by upper school administration and elementary school. They also run a concurrent track for any new hires. So as we're bringing on new employees for next year, we're providing the opportunity that they would attend the Hillsdale Conference, and the timing is working out for several of them, so that's really exciting as well. I have the CLT results. If you recall, CLT stands for Classic Learning Test. We give a version of that test to 7th and 8th graders in the fall. We give a version to 9th and 10th graders, and then the CLT for juniors we give in February, and the average score for LCCA this year was a 75 compared to the national average of 67. And just looking at the performance by year, our juniors the year before had an average of 66.
The junior year before the seniors who just graduated?
Yes. So we did have more taking it this year. The junior class this year is greater in number, if that had anything to do with the growth that you see. But typically it's difficult to compare, again, year over year, different class groups to the previous class. You know, it's a new set of students, different context, but some improvement is pleasant to see.
So the CLT, who takes that nationwide for the national average? Who is that? Who is that encompassing? Is it all public or charters?
It's available to any student, like the ACT is. It's not required, like some states require the ACT, but it is available. So homeschool students take it, charter school students take it, independent, parochial. It's a wide variety, and it's growing in popularity, if that's the right word, across the nation.
I have a question on the previous
Sure.
comment that you had up here about the attendance of the gala, and in light of the public comment today. Has there been any feedback from any parents or past participants in the gala that maybe resulted in lower attendance based on frustration around the comment that was raised tonight about the money being spent for things in the past? I'm just kind of curious if we've had any feedback where people are like, I'm not going to attend this year because the Fort Campus project or anything like that. I was just curious.
I did have a couple comments. It wasn't a lot, but I did have a few comments to that effect.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just a snapshot of our rolling enrollment. I took these numbers on the 14th. At that time, we had a total of 206 applications for the 2025-26 school year, with 100 accepted seats and a wait list of 58. I had time to take a sneak peek today, and we're actually at 217 applications as of today, and 64 on the wait list. So our enrollment process continues. Parents and interested students are still entering applications, and we're offering seats that we have available and or placing those applicants on the appropriate grade level wait list. So we continue to attract interested potential students, and we're continuing to fill seats as we can for the next school year.
Just a comment or question here. Looks like the high school enrollment is pretty strong. I mean, based on this, right? That the retention, I should say, is pretty strong. We're only trying to fill 6 total seats for high school. Am I understanding?
This is the applications, like the students that have enrolled for 8th grade, the students that have enrolled for 9th grade, the interested students in
They're not
these
currently in
programs.
the schools,
That's
in
right.
our school. But does that correlate with the number of openings, or we have more openings in those grades?
We have more openings.
Okay, so some of the
These are
applicants.
just applicants, not
Got it, okay.
current numbers or
Okay.
available seats.
What is that, or, for the high school, what is our open versus capacity?
The numbers are constantly in flux right now,
Sure.
which is why I don't report on that
Uh,
until there's some solid count to that, so.
Good.
So this captures all the applications of students who want to be here who are not currently here.
That's correct. New student applications for the next school year is at 217. So just to touch base on the financials for this month. You had an opportunity to review the income statement and the budget versus actual report as well as the bank reconciliation report. You'll have noticed that the revenue we received in April included gala revenue, some special education IDEA flow through, some student fees, and some earnings on investments with Edward Jones and Waukesha State Bank. To date, our earnings on those investments is $81,600. We did do some adjustments. We sold an Edward Jones CD and invested it in a money market account at a rate of 4.16%. And we reinvested a Waukesha State Bank CD to a 7-month CD at an annual percentage rate of 4.35%. But $81,600 is our earnings on those investments so far. Our expenditures this month included some monthly payments to facility vendors, third-party employment agencies, and some IT purchases that will be reimbursed with the waiver cohort grant. In the bank reconciliation report, you'll have noticed that the April bank statement for the checking account is being reconciled to the ending balance of $333,000 and some change. The money market account reconciles to the ending balance of a little over $1.4 million. And the Waukesha State Bank CD is $100,000, while the Edward Jones is being reconciled to a little over $790,000. Total cash on hand is a little over $3 million. That equates to approximately 148 days cash on hand. Last year at this time, we were a little over $2 million, which was 111 days cash on hand. In the budget versus actual report, you'll have noticed that our salaries and part-time salaries budget versus actual is at about 70.9%. And each month I just give the reminder that that's due to some employees that are paid out on a 21-month basis versus 24-month payroll. A couple other things to note on the budget versus actual report. Our East and West campus leases and mobile modular classroom rental, as well as the parking lot fee at our East campus is all on pace for this fiscal year. Our cleaning and environmental services, janitorial services at both campuses are on pace with the cost projections for this fiscal year. Our payment to the CISAs is trending at our projected cost. That's CISA 1, CISA 5, and CISA 6, which assist us in a variety of ways, both financially as well as in our student services department and in our required evaluation process with faculty. And the other item to note, which wasn't in any of the financial reports, but it should be mentioned, is that our 990 return was filed this past month, and so we filed that appropriately and on time. And that concludes my report for this month.
So, Margaret, or maybe it's a Lori question, but can I look at line 291, the fundraising and contributions is showing 269. Current year is the 252 from the gala. Is that all in there?
I'm gonna
Look at the actual or the budget or?
The current year-to-date activity,
What was your line item, Randy?
291, 291. The current year budget 947, current year activity 269.
So those were all that was the activity that includes the activity from the gala, and then any donations that we received. So that's what that whole line item is.
So is that all in then? Beginning?
Yes, there's a few we're still collecting on, but not much.
So was the 252, there was some things netted out of there, and this was a net number then?
Mhm.
Because I thought it was like 70 something before, if I remember correctly.
In the previous month,
That's what I thought. Maybe I don't.
I would have to go back.
I
and look
I
that
can
up.
get you the detail on the two different ones. I don't remember.
Okay, so, but there's like, the 252 is a gross number, there's a net number that would show up in here.
That is the net number,
The 252 is the net.
yes, and I'm sorry, I can't read,
Yeah, it's a little blurry.
and I don't have a.
Oh, sorry.
But, it is the net, so whatever it is,
Okay, what Margaret showed before is the net number for the gala.
yes.
Okay.
And I think this page is not there, my items. This is not what the numbers are.
I have one other question, and I just need to find it.
Wait, sorry, so just going back to this, is the right way to look at that is that we're really under budget for the fundraising activity? Or is that,
No,
I'm just,
that- Revenue line that you asked, that's just the revenue that was received. So it's not the net when you're looking at the revenue versus expenses.
That's just
So
for
I'm
the
not sure
month
if
too,
I'm-
right?
If I'm understanding your
So
question.
my question was, the 252 Margaret showed, was that our, I didn't know if there was expenses, like gala expenses, that it was 252 is our gross intake, and
That's
there
the
was
gross.
20,000 expenses or something that's taken out of there. And was that month, the current year date number, was that including, which I think your answer is yes, most of the money that we would get from the gala? So essentially, that number is going to be close to our final year-end number, that
Yes.
259 number. And I know we have the 500 coming in too, but outside of that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay, great.
Mhm.
And my other question was, I've been meaning to ask this the last couple months. There's a Edward Jones, it says Edward Jones municipal money, there's 534,000. What is the municipal money? What is that a reference to?
This is the name of the type of account. So it's a federated, it's called a federated, it's like a money market account type of account. They call it a TTOXX. So it's like a money market investment account.
So that was sort of my question, is it a municipal money market account? Or is that just the name of the account? Because my only question was, because if it's a municipal, it would be a lower yielding money market, and since we're not paying taxes, we wouldn't need that. We could take the higher one without the tax exemption. So that's why I was curious on it. It's usually municipal money markets might pay 75% of what a taxable one, and if we're not getting the tax benefit from it, we might be better off using the taxable with the higher yield. So that was the reason for my question.
Okay, so I can look into that.
And if you just want to send me to what it is, I can look it up
Mhm.
too, if it's not obvious to you,
Okay,
and let you know.
yeah, I'll do that.
So, okay. And then, Margaret, one other thing I wanted to, this is sort of a question, and I kind of know the answer, but it was in your report, but I thought it'd be good for everybody else in the group to know. Teacher retention, you said it's strong, or looks strong in your
Anticipating it to be
your
strong,
report.
yes.
I know you don't have the final answers yet, but I know one thing we learned in Hillsdale was sort of what normal retention would be. Which I was news to me, so I thought if you just shared that with the group, it might be helpful just for some context.
I need to pull my notes back up just to make sure I quote that correctly. Am I recalling it? It's 75 to 80% is considered healthy faculty staff retention year over year?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think from Hillsdale's guidance and their experience with a variety of schools across the nation, that tends to be a typical retention rate, simply because people, their family circumstances change, they move, they retire, they have babies, all of those life changes that might call them to move on from employment. And so if we are in that 75 to 80% range, when all is settled and the new year has begun, we can consider ourselves to have healthy faculty and staff retention.
So, the main reason I just wanted to bring it up is because I was kind of surprised that the number was as big as it was, and I just thought it'd be some context when we get our final numbers to have something at least to compare it to. So, anyway, that's why I wanted to
Sure.
share that. All right, any other questions for Margaret on the report? I have some enrollment questions, but I'll just tie that to the budget when we get
Okay.
into that. Anything else? Okay, can we move on to one campus? John, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, not much outside of capital campaign discussion, which I think is separate. Small update I did, I think, on Erica's recommendation, and we reached out to Carl Millard, the president of the KM school board. And I think this was also in a news article somewhere out there. And that it looks like KM needs to make some decisions about some of their facilities and their sites. So the conversation with Carl, and I'll just report it as is. Randy, you can decide if we're talking about any of it. So their thought was about LCCA becoming a part of KM. It was not on necessarily an explicit interest in just leasing or selling one of their sites. They are, in his words, they do have to do something about their schools. The schools that are kind of in their discussions are the Cushing, Dousman, McGee, and Wales. Cushing, Dousman, and Wales are in kind of like 500 to 550 student capacity range. McGee is at kind of the high 200s. I'd asked them kind of explicitly, so you're really talking about us becoming a part of CAM. It isn't that you have actual interest in just a direct sale or lease, and he said that's correct. I had said, and I said, I asked him if he knew sort of how it worked. If we're part of the KM school district, then we are KM, and the flow of funds per student kind of comes through the KM school district before it comes to us to do with it how we want within our school budget and such. He didn't give a definitive answer, but that is ostensibly how it should work, was the thought. Any other key? No, so that was, that's probably the key points out of that. So it's just a question if you want to talk about it or.
Yeah, so I guess, John, Jen and I left that, we thought, and I don't think you've talked to him since, but just wanted to kind of throw that out there, what that preliminary conversation was. And our, I guess when John and I talked, our initial thought was, let them know if they do decide to sell a building, or if they're considering engaging a long-term lease, to give us a call back. But as far as becoming part of that district, probably not something we want to pursue at this time, but keep it in mind as a future option potentially. So that was sort of what John and I thought was maybe the best approach here, that there wouldn't be a lot of interest in becoming part of that district right now from the board, but at least just letting them know, depending on how this plays out, that they should contact us if they do decide on long-term lease or sale. So, and I think Erica, when she talked to them, said that he said they would be interested in a lease, but I think it was more a short-term lease that they were looking at rather than a long-term. So anyway, I just wanted to get the thoughts from the board. That was just John and I having a preliminary discussion.
Well, I mean, my initial thoughts are, you know, enrollment's declining in the public schools. And so, you know, I think that's probably where their interest, like they're losing people to LCCA and other places. But for them to hold on to that real estate long-term, I mean, it's not our decision necessarily to make, but it doesn't seem like a prudent use of taxpayer dollars.
Agreed.
Seems like it's a hefty price to pay to get a building to become part of a larger organization. Yeah, it's, yeah. I don't think there's
I
any
agree.
interest in moving.
But I
having
also
that
think we
conversation.
shouldn't necessarily rely on them to tell us. We should be monitoring closely, you know, if they list the properties, et cetera, because if their goal is that we would be part of Kettle Marine, I think that's probably a non-starter, I would guess, for us as a board. I don't want to speak, that's my initial reaction, but we need to be monitoring it and explore any options that we can to acquire something like that. Because it sounds like some of these facilities are, I don't know where they're located exactly, but from a size standpoint, it'd be a great fit for us.
Yeah. Yeah, so my guess is when we do our strategic planning and we submit our topics, that this is going to make the cut here as a strategic planning item. So I think some of these things, you know, we're talking about here and some of the suggestions, those are things we want to incorporate into a strategy. So we just wanted to kind of get the feedback from the group for now. Go ahead.
Did they give a timeline on when we'll have to make some decisions on facilities?
So he had left it as it would be good for us to come back to him in May, because they had to make a decision.
Oh, so it's
Um,
short order.
So what he put it, I'd asked, you know, where really they are. He did make the comment that, and this, whether it's positioning or whatever it is, that there really isn't any interest in selling it at all. They would rather carry it, because in 10 years, depending on the demographics of where things go, you know, they have the option. Yeah, again, take it for what it is. That's just kind of repeating things. But yeah, they were interested in knowing by May, and I had said, well, we have our monthly board meeting and we'll talk about it.
I can give you an exact date. June 11th is when we're deciding what school to close. They just announced that today.
Thank you, Erica.
It's hard for me to imagine a scenario where we would maintain our distinctiveness.
Yeah.
I mean, the word non-starter was used.
Well, that was sort of my
Yeah.
concern, is even if out of the gate, it's like, hey, you can do things the way you want and operate the way you want and get all these benefits. Who knows what happens 2 years from now, or a new leader comes in, or as things change, so.
Right, and why would you say that, knowing that every other school in your family would say, okay, now we want to do our own? I mean, I think it's fraught.
Yeah, okay, it seemed clear when John and I talked, but I just wanted to make sure that the board was on board. So.
But it's good work, though. It's good to know kind of where their heads are. And it's interesting carrying all of that, to Skylar's point, for 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Demographic trends are going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I mean, not that it couldn't change, but
Right.
the likelihood it can fall.
Yeah, so, okay, well, you know, I think, like your suggestion, Skylar, I think we really need to hash that out when we do our strategic plan and have a plan and make sure we're, you know, leaving no stone unturned and we're watching for these opportunities. And I also had a few informational things that other members of the community just sent, you know, ideas on costs and other buildings and things too, which I shared with John. So thank you, everybody, for sharing those ideas. All right. And then the other thing, just related to the One Campus, the capital campaign document, Tim Ditloff gave us that document. It was just meant to be sort of a general outline. Am I hitting the right points? And he had a schedule. He wanted to stay on schedule for this capital campaign. He's a couple weeks behind where he wants to be, so I just told him I would bring it up and make sure. It was all sent to you. You had a chance to respond. Some of you talked to him. I just wanted to make sure I can tell him to go forward with the information he has, that there was nothing else, that he can take it to the next step. I'm sorry.
Well, I guess it's how how do you want us to approach how that works in terms of, I think it's part of his responsibilities and such, like I think that's his job, at least it falls under. Are we kind of just looking at something and saying, yeah, sure, looks fine? Are we supposed to be kind of like actively engaging, commenting on it? Just what, how should we think about that
So I think his step with that document is make sure he has the right information in there. He's got it right, it's accurate, there's nothing significant he's missing. And then he would try and take that and then put it in a form that's more usable rather than a Word document that we can start sharing. So Tim and Margaret, you could probably speak to this better, but he seems like he's open to suggestions and he wants our input. He has some expertise in the area, but he seemed very open to our ideas and thoughts of how we should, present this. So his first step was making sure he had the right information, the key points that he can build this campaign around. Anything to add?
I think that sounds right. I think he was just looking for confirmation from you all on your perspective and maybe your insights, and wanting to kind of have that green light to move forward in the direction that he's kind of outlined for us, knowing that he had your support in kind of that general introductory perspective. So as long as if you have comments and want to give him input, he's open to receiving that from you as well, as he designs his strategy going forward.
We just have to email him individually, correct? Instead of like a group response, so we don't run afoul of open meeting.
I think you could do that individually. We could probably have him back at a meeting too. When he gets to that next step, we could give him feedback at a meeting. So either way, but if you have individual suggestions that would help him along the way, I think he's open to those. So I know you don't want to interfere with his work,
Right.
but at the same time, I think we want to make sure he's on the track or has the information he needs to get on the track we want him to be on.
I think it's also just like when I think about it is, and it's a question of if we want it to be the case. I think if we're, come in a few weeks, sitting down to talk about strategic planning, usually the outcome of like a broad strategic planning is kind of the basis and the driver behind a capital campaign. So in some ways I look at that, if it was just like me kind of like, you can't really have that until we have the broader strategy. That's so in terms of like moving forward, it's kind of in just as an opinion or like based on experience or what have you. It's like we would first need if we're driving a broader strategy for all of this, then you need that first to then drive a capital campaign, and those two are always related. But
Is it possible that the work of previous board composition would have defined at least the kind of one campus strategy, the target of a single location that would house about 850 as our target K-12 enrollment? We have some sense based on our work to this point of what that would likely cost versus ground up versus remodel of an existing facility, and therefore there is a sense of how much money a capital campaign should target, and so he could continue in his process, or would you like him to hold until after our strategic?
I think that's really like the question. I think if it's just like say me, my view on it is like I would pitch the whole thing differently. And also like things, for example, like I wouldn't cap the amount because frankly we have no idea. Like we can kind of like say that we do, but we don't really. And by the way, that's okay. And there's plenty of ways to put, like the whole 5 million number. I think Tim might have reasons for it. I had the same number, but a different reason behind it. you can go and raise whatever without, like, you don't have to say a project costs any specific number, in my view, again, just my opinion. So it's just a question, like, what do we want to do? I think, yeah, absolutely, you can do a campaign with some of those previous numbers, that's fine. But you might also pitch it differently, depending on where we come out on what the strategy is.
Yeah, so, I think Tim can keep moving forward with some of the things he's doing, but I will make sure, that I did tell him, but that he knows we have this meeting and some more detail could come out of it, just so he doesn't get too far
Yeah.
and have something change. But I will, I think what he's doing is trying to line up donors and a story and things like that. And so I'll just make sure he knows that, so he's not going down a path and has to reverse course based on.
I don't think that we want to finalize that item, but I think, to John's point, it's part of the strategic planning process. What are the core pillars that you want to accomplish? And certainly development fundraising is one of them. And so I think we want to incorporate maybe some of the things that we discuss in our strategic planning into that. So how far down the road? But I think having a foundation of some general alignment from our group as part of that can all kind of tie that up and it goes together.
Yeah, that's a good point. I just don't want him to get too far down the road if something's gonna change, but some of the things he can do, or maybe he changes his calendar a little bit to do some other things that he was gonna do later, if he can do it sooner now, work on those. Because strategic planning, we're only a few weeks away here, we're not too bad doing it, so. So I will communicate that to Tim.
Yeah, jump in quick.
Yep.
So I talked to him. He called me and we had a nice chat, and nothing we talked about would fly in the face of strategic planning. A lot of it was mechanics, approach. We talked about segmentation and market segmentation. We talked a lot about marketing, that kind of stuff. He was receptive. He was collaborative. It was good. He also indicated that he was going to try to set up time to speak with each board member. So, depending on when this gets deployed, if strategic planning, we've got a light at the end of the tunnel there in the next 4 to 6 weeks or something like that. If this isn't getting deployed before then, I think it was a good conversation. I would encourage other board members to talk to him. It was 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and I felt better. I had a beat on it. I agree, we don't want to run afoul of strategic planning, but nothing we talked about would have done that. It was more mechanics and kind of getting my head in the game of where his head was. And like I said, I found him receptive and it was good.
Did you talk to him?
Yeah, I talked to him too. And by the way, this is not I'm not by any stretch, it's not speaking ill of any, his head is in the right place and everything. It's just and I in our conversation, ours was less about mechanics. I think my feedback to him on, all that stuff is not, it's fine. I said, I think for what this is, it's lacking tangibility for a big donor to see, to really tangibly feel what is the potential legacy that they're writing into.
I had a similar comment. That's for the segmentation.
Okay.
We can't talk to everybody like they know our school community, for
Right.
example. But yeah, we had a similar kind of outcome.
And I just think a lot of those things, that narrative, how to hone in on that narrative does, at least in my mind, it comes out of broader strategy. And then you take the broader strategy and then you translate it for how do you make it tangible to people.
Yep. And did you share that with him?
Yeah.
Because okay.
But I didn't give him I would do this because I didn't know.
Yeah, no,
how
I
it
understand.
works.
Okay. All right. Good. So our next item is this is nothing we're going to vote on tonight, but sort of first reviews of a handful of items. I'll go in the order I have them here. And first is the preliminary budget. So Margaret, I don't know if you want to make some comments on that, or you just want us to start asking questions?
Well, this would be the time to, if you've had a chance to review, that we can speak to some of your questions, and then, as Randy said, this is for vote next month. But you can see the 23-24, 24-25, and the 25-26 preliminary there for your comparison. We currently have 584 students enrolled for next school year, but we typically budget with some view to conservative attrition. So we aim for about a 2% decrease from current enrollment. So that would be the 573 number that you see as our projected enrollment. So that is about 2% less than what we're currently anticipating. We budget off of an unknown per pupil revenue amount at this time. The legislation finalizes budget and informs us of what our per pupil amount for the upcoming school year will be, probably in July, which is also why we don't finalize this budget. This is just preliminary because some of those things are unknown. So that's just something to keep in mind. Beyond that, I'm open to your questions and will likely defer to Mrs. Kari, who's here to answer questions as well.
So the $325 increase, is that something that's out there? We know that's the number, it's just not formally approved then?
In the per pupil funding?
Yeah.
No, that's just an anticipation of historical trend percentage increases that have been in place, but with the legislation that was passed last summer by Governor Evers, or proposed and then passed, it kind of interrupted historical trend pretty significantly with the increase we received. So now it's really an unknown. There's chatter, if you will, that we may even stay stagnant and that our per pupil amount will remain the same for next year as it is this year. So we really just don't know right now.
If I was a betting person, that's where I would.
That's
where I would place my wagers.
Okay.
It would be a some zero budget since
Yeah, it was such an increase.
temperature. No, because of the temperature within the legislature
Okay.
being what it is with the executive branch. So I have a hunch that it'll just stay the same.
Okay.
It's good to know.
But I mean, don't place your wagers based on.
Your hunch?
There was this fair reduction in gifts and fundraising. Obviously, we want to budget conservatively there, but is there a reason why that number is significantly lower than it was in 3 and 24? It was $695 budget in 23, 947, which I assume some of that's a large gift for this year,
Right.
but that's half of what we received in gifts in 23 and 24.
So-
And we're starting a capital campaign, so just kind of curious.
But a capital campaign would not be, that will run in its own independent budget.
Okay.
It won't be within operational because it is essentially earmarked for one campus.
Okay.
So this is a decrease because we are not anticipating a $500,000 donation in any way, and we're conservatively projecting for next year's gala.
So, as long as Skylar was on that topic, I had a similar question, and that was one of the reasons I asked that question before that Lori was explaining. So we budgeted 364, and this year it looks like we're at 79 or whatever the number was. What will be different next year that would lead us to believe we would get 364 instead of the 279?
Projections from Tim Ditloff being targeting not just capital campaign, but general donors in addition to that. So we have had some conversations about what he thinks he's maybe capable of funding, if you will, from within his network and within his plans to drum up, if you will, potential support. So that's included in there as well.
Okay, so that's not capital campaign money, this is operating.
Right, so he's having conversations where he's just, finding people that he's telling our story and they're getting excited, and he's potentially lining up some campus visits and some tours over the summer where we might just introduce ourselves to people and get them on board to be supporters ongoing, if you
Dual
will.
revenue stream.
Yes, but then also he's running that kind of capital campaign plan concurrent to that. So we're drumming up recurring annual support as well as strategic one campus donations.
The other one I want to ask if you could explain, and maybe this is a Lori question, is it looks like an offset. There's the revenue transfer from Fund 1027, and I can see that happened 2 years ago before I was here. And it looks like it's an offset, but if you could explain what that is.
I'm gonna let Mrs. Curry speak to that.
So there'll always be a transfer of funds from the general fund 10 to Fund 27. So 10 is the operating fund, and then Fund 27 is the special education fund. And so there'll be this 492,540. There'll be the revenue amount. That's what we're budgeting based on the budget for the special education expenses. And then you'll see down on the expenses, it's the same amount, so it's gonna net out.
Right.
And it's just at the end of the year, that transfer happens, because throughout the whole school year, the operating funds are paying for all the special ed, the student services expenses. And so this is just a standard way that you do the transfer.
Do you get like then a reimbursement check at the end, or how?
It's just an internal, like, accounting piece, the transfer.
Okay.
So it's just showing that there's gonna be the difference between what we spent in student services and the operating. And I can get you a better explanation at a later time if you more questions on it.
We do get about 30% reimbursement on special education expenses.
I guess the bigger question is why do you need to have it in the budget as an offset?
For the style of public school accounting that we do right now, it's Skyward.
On the insurance, the benefit insurances, those are relatively hefty increases. Can you give me some context there?
Yeah, so that, I didn't change anything from what was approved in February.
Okay.
And so as we go through the hiring process and now we have all the numbers for where we actually came in with renewal, because our renewals are in April. And so then for the final, the final budget will include like where we're at with our staff. And I just left it the same. So that does account for a 15% plus a 15% increase. And we're at about 0%. So the only increase is going to be with whatever new employees will take. So that was with the health, where it net out as close to a 0% increase, and then the dental and the vision was just a small increase.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was about 7%. I believe it was dental.
That makes sense.
So we should be in better shape, and the number will go down from there for the final.
What's driving the increase on the maintenance budget?
The maintenance, we increased the mechanics that we have to fix throughout the year. We tend to have higher expenses than what we're projecting.
Yeah.
So we upped those numbers a little bit. We increased the plowing, and we just did that because this year we didn't have that rough of a winter.
Yeah.
So we increased that a little bit. more, and then, our Muller cleaning service, there was an increase, every year we have an increase on that, and we base the numbers on the actual contract that we have signed for next year. And then
I think I would add to that just a conservative projection that the longer we're in our current facilities, the more maintenance we might incur. So we're trying to proactively make sure we can handle whatever unforeseen needs might arise. So we've had some roofing issues here at this campus. We're looking into that and in conversations with our landlords about those things. But we're also trying to make sure we're in a good place should something unforeseen occur.
Are some of those like a cost shared arrangement with the landlord, or some exclusively ours as the tenant and versus they have, that's all delineated, I'm sure, in the.
It is in our lease. So for example, HVAC, we have plumbing, we have roofing, we're at 50-50 at this campus. At the West campus, it's all different numbers. But yes, it's
Okay.
shared. Some things are 50-50, some things are totally
Okay.
ours.
I don't know how granular we want to get, but would it be possible for things like software and any of these like technology things? Could we just get like a schedule of like how many seats or licenses, just so we know? I'm not expecting. I'd like 23,000 for Microsoft Office. That may or may not actually be reasonable. I would fully expect that we're more efficient than our government, but I just wanted to know what it'd be helpful to just kind of see like a per seat basis and how many licenses. And then the other thing, and Randy, if this is like not appropriate or we have to do it in some other way, but I was curious, could we see like for salaries, payroll and stuff, can we break it down between like administrative versus teachers and full-time versus part-time, just so you understand how that works? Would that be okay?
I think so.
Okay, yeah, it'd be helpful. Just,
I think that's a great question, if we can do that. I had a couple of, one question one on the enrollment numbers, but before I get to that one, I just wanted, on the line 45, which was the CISA services, and I know Lori had explained this to me a few months ago when I was talking to her, so I might have my facts mix up here, but I thought when we had a new, accounting employee, some of those services we could do internally rather than outsource those services. And I noticed it did go down a little bit. But is that what we expected when we hired the employee, that the impact was like 10,000, that the CISA services went down? Or I guess I was just.
I'm not projecting for them to go down a whole lot because she's getting trained. So we're still using our CISA 5, the accounts payable and receivable
Okay.
personnel to train our employees. So next year, it should go, the cost should go down because she should be able to, be trained and then be able to do everything.
Okay. So we're
That's
thinking
CISA.
full for most of this year will be required for training purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And then what would you think like next year then? What would be your best guess of how significant that would go down?
I did,
I'm just curious, are we talking 30,000,
Yeah,
are we talking cut in half? Or?
I'm estimating having it go down to, there's a lot of services that CISA 5 does, so they do payroll, they assist with the audit as well. They will do, they help out with like getting the budget up in Skyward and the So I'll have them do a part while I'm doing a part of that. And then they handle some of the grants that we work with, and it's basically the special ed department, those grants, because they're so intricate. And so I reduced it to about 11,000. It could go down significantly, but just because I have to see how this all plays out with, I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to internally do more with the audit.
Okay.
So that amount could go down from what I'm projecting, but
It's hard to put a number on it
it
at
is.
this point. Is that what you're saying? It's hard to
Yes,
put a
but it
number
will
beyond.
decrease.
Yeah, okay.
But I also want to point out that that line item, that line 45, is not just the CISA 5 support. We are also
Yeah.
partnered with CISA 1 and CISA 6, so there is outgoing expense to the other CISAs as well, and it's all in that same line item.
Okay.
So CISA 1 services are like 13,800, and CISA 6 is 6,100, and I have CISA 5 at 84,000.
Yes, Mr. Dial?
I'd like to just butt in without raising my hand.
Go ahead.
So I'm trying to be a better example for my children who aren't here. You're supposed to raise your hand.
Do you think they're watching?
No.
You can always play it
But,
back.
yeah. So I just want to clarify and make sure we address this. And with respect to the budget, it looks like from a budget to expected for the year, we continue this year, 24, 25. We continue to operate as we are expecting through the last month and a half. We're going to come out in a positive, ahead of budget, correct? And
With our projected surplus, I mean.
yes, yeah, I
Yes.
have a surplus.
Yep.
And then we're also projecting based on, assuming we approve this budget, things run next year also looks to be like we're running in the black versus the red. Is that a,
Yes.
just want to get that on the record.
Fair
To make sure that that's clearly understood, that we continue to run, in a very conservative manner, which I think is important. And, granted, there's some learning opportunities, some of the things that we've done, we're a new school, but I think that's a positive, right? We're not running in the red. Don't appear that that's gonna be the case in the short run.
We're also trying to align ourselves with the information that we learned in the process of pursuing one campus on what markets us best for financial support. So we're trying to hit, the healthy cash on hand, the surplus, the percentage spent on salaries and benefits, a variety of different things that just make us, our historical records would show our fiscal responsibility and our viability from a financial underwriter in a major project. So we have a sense to that when we're designing the budget and looking to aim for a minimum 3% surplus and hope to keep ourselves in good, healthy financial standing so that when the time comes, we're ready to show the health of our organization. So thank you for pointing that out. That's definitely something we hold as a key responsibility of fiscal management.
Well, and I'd like to just, as the new kid on the block here, give you some kudos and props for being in the black and not in the red, because I think at the beginning of anything, that's when things are so uncertain and brand new to everyone, it's usually typical to be running in the red and figuring it out as you go. So I commend everyone for keeping the ship afloat the right way from the get-go. I think that's a very positive thing that you should be very proud of yourselves for.
Thank you.
Unlike a lot of the other.
And we're debt-free too, right? So,
Yes.
so, yeah,
Mhm.
it's great.
So I wanted to ask about the enrollment, because obviously that's a big assumption in making these numbers. And I know, it's every year is a new year, and it's hard, especially as a newer school, to sort of project those things. So but I think it's important that we're comfortable with where those are at. So when I looked back at the March report, and I think at that point we had 99 new students, 487 returning students, with 51 departed, and we came up at that point with 587. I know now I think we have 100 new students, so we're about the same. So I'm implying essentially that we've only lost like 3 students since then.
Well, the
existing
numbers would
students.
imply that it's been only 3, but it's probably been, we lost and gained, and we lost and gained, and it's netting out to, we're at 584 right now as our count.
I guess I was talking about the, sorry, I did, March report, you had returning students and withdrawn students. So
Oh.
returning was 487, withdrawn is 51. So
Okay.
that 51 number has only gone up a few.
Yes, that's correct. Okay, I misunderstood.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, sorry, I'm speaking on a chart I'm looking at here now, so I understand. So I just looked last year just to kind of see where we were and then versus what happened. And it looked like in June of last year, so a little bit ahead of here, we had 612 with, if I interpreted correctly, with 151 wait list. And we ended up with 564 and a 15 wait list. So we ended up from June to the start of the school year with 8% less students than we had if we used a similar methodology in June. So I don't know, like, if there's key deadlines or things, or if last year was an aberration, but it seems like to go from 8% decline to assuming where we're going to be at the start of the school year seems like a stretch on the surface. So I was wondering if you had reasons to believe that what happened last year wouldn't happen this year, that this number's a reasonable guess versus losing 8% like we did last year.
Sure, a valid question. I think the first thing to understand is, as we're building the budget, we kind of keep tabs on the progress of our projected enrollment number and typically do that 2% attrition expectation. And so as we, again, get closer to the start of the school year, should our number of expected start date enrollment count change, we would likely adjust the preliminary budget to reflect that as well. So that's the first thing. This budget is not necessarily solid, it's preliminary, so you can expect potential adjustments to the enrollment projection should the summer afford us additional information of grand influx or fluctuations, if you will. The second component, or I think answer to that question, is we have taken proactive measures to really get a stronger bead on the students who have committed to return in the survey that went in January. And when I say that, I would attribute that to we are able, in our scheduling for the high school especially, have defined our class schedule almost to certainty. Again, nothing is certain until we're ready to share it out as final. But we have a very good sense of our scheduling. We needed to do so because of the shift of 6th grade to that west campus. Like, can we make this work? Is it going to fit? How many sections of X, Y, and Z are we going to run? We had some ambition to incorporate some new elective classes into the course scheduling for upper or high school students, and so we were ahead of the game of where we have been in previous school years, which has afforded us the opportunity to have individual meetings with rising 9th through 12th graders, so current 8th through 11th graders, to propose their schedules, to give them their elective options already, and those conversations have given us a strong sense of commit to return. I think in all of those conversations, we've maybe had 3 students who have hesitated and said, well, I'm not really sure if I'm coming back. And we've been able to follow up and be encouraging and, you know, why do you think that is? What are your thoughts? What can we do to talk you through what your options are? And so in that case, we have a very strong confidence. I almost feel like I should be knocking on wood. We have a very strong confidence that the attrition of last summer would not be a recurring event in this summer. We feel good about the families who have given us their commitment to return. We feel especially good about the high school students that have given us their commitment to return. And that confidence has come from those conversations that we've had towards scheduling. Now, instead of having that be kind of at early summer when we don't have a chance to sit down one-on-one with each student, we really appreciated that we were able to give ourselves that opportunity. So, to answer your question, this budget will continue to fluctuate as our knowledge of precise numbers continues to adjust while the summer months occur. And then you're asking me for a gut perspective right now, and I feel strongly that our numbers are healthy, and that outside of kind of the natural attrition that happens over the summer months in any educational institution, we should be within this range at the start of the 25-26 school year.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful, yeah, because I was looking at it, like, especially with a child on a wait list, you can't backfill as easily as, when
Sure.
Students withdraw, so. And I think the actual number of existing, I looked last year, and I think it was somewhere in the mid-50s, was the final number. That
Existing.
didn't return, the existing students that didn't return.
Oh, I'm so into the next year's number. I would have to look that up to
I
be
did look
certain.
it up, I can't remember.
Absolutely. I apologize.
I think we're close to that
Okay,
number, so, so I think that's comforting.
Sure.
At least that it's close. And then we approve the budget next month, is that correct?
no, you approve the preliminary budget, but you don't actually
The
approve a
actual
final
budget
budget
is-
until October.
Oh, okay, so that's.
Because
where we
that's
can
when
make
my
the-
And that's on that
enrollment will.
Excel calendar.
Mhm. Yep.
And then, yeah, and then the other thing I was just thinking is, because obviously you have to have like your staff in place. and-
Right.
But we're at least in the ballpark.
Right. So approving a preliminary budget is essentially saying to me and my staff that we're on the right track as far as budgeting for the next school year. You approve our progress thus far, but you really can't approve anything in its finality until I have a per pupil payment number, until I have September count, how many students did I start the school year with. So it really, you're pretty much saying you're on the right track, Margaret and team, as far as your budgeting and your planning. And we will approve a final budget along these trends come October, when revenue and enrollment are solidly known.
I used to think of it as validating the assumptions that are being made right now.
Thank you, that's a good way to say it. I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. That's very, very helpful. The only thing I'm wondering is when we do this, based on George's comments, if, on the preliminary at least, if we do believe that the extra money is not coming, if we make that assumption on the preliminary, which is like 180 less. The $325,000 increase in the student reimbursement. You said you didn't think that was going to happen. What was your hunch?
The hunch is that the budget that will be signed, that will affect the school districts, will be the same as it was. But there would be the increase, the 3% or whatever whatever
Typically,
that
there
they
has been like
automatically
a
put
2 to
in,
3%.
that would
Yes.
be
Kind of like
also.
standard of living.
So those are
if you
two
will.
separate things.
Um,
There's an increase, like a inflationary increase, and then there's another increase on top of that. So you're saying the extra increase won't happen, but that inflationary increase will?
That's-
If I understood what Margaret
If
said.
I
that is
understand, I'm like, did I
Are we
understand you
talking
correctly?
past each other?
Do you, I want to input
Okay,
anything? We're
so-
tracking this pretty closely, so.
So right now, the per pupil amount is what it's at.
11,000 something.
In the years prior, when we were in the new budget, waiting for a budget to come about,
For the
we
school
would
or
always,
for
for the school, we would end up adding like a 3% increase. So that was typically how we do the projections. And then,
and where are you getting the 3% increase?
so that's what we did before the
Yeah,
last
historical
budget
data.
passed.
So from the state, so that would be
Yeah.
your number.
Is it,
Yeah.
yes.
Correct.
Okay,
That's-
so then.
And then Evers
Then-
changed it all.
Then we had the last budget, and so we know what our numbers are from
Mhm.
last year and this year.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then and then they send information out. And so I'm hoping that it's safe to say that our per pupil number now plus $325 is what they're saying we can add to it. So if that all goes fine, the number that we put in for the per pupil should be okay, but anything can happen.
Is the 325 the 3% increase? Or did they explain what the extra 325 was?
I think, I don't
It's their
remember how I calculated
projected,
it.
it depends on who you
I'll
ask,
just give you a,
but yes,
Of course it
it's the
does.
projected guess that most public schools are anticipating.
Is it 3% of the per
It's
pupil
like
cost?
2 point something.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, then that's
yeah.
probably what it
Yes.
is, then that.
Yeah.
then
yeah.
that might be-
Okay, so we had basis for that number, and if it didn't come through, or was
We
less.
do. If we stay totally stagnant, like $11,827 again per student, that would be unusual,
Right.
very unusual.
It's not gonna be
So,
lower
this
than
is-
that,
yeah.
I'm certain of that.
Right, we're not gonna lose, and we've made the most conservative projection for what we understand right now. We're hoping that there's a little bit more increase than what we're projecting, but it seems wise to build the preliminary budget based on what we've established, based on what we know, and based on historical trends.
What was that number, 11,000?
827,
827.
and sometimes it's not 287, it's 827, right?
So
Yes.
close. Okay.
There's an assumption sheet that shows that. Okay, then any other questions for Margaret on the budget?
Just real quick, this is I just don't know, like where, how these categories all work. Like if something, so books, that's clear. If there's something like, I don't know, high school science labs or something that need to be acquired, like where does something like that fall in?
That would be under like the supplies.
That's, so that's the supply thing. Okay, great.
Yep.
So then, just to make sure I got the takeaways here, you're gonna try and get us sort of a breakout of the, by category on the salaries, the admin versus the teachers, and then the part-time versus full-time.
Yes.
And then, John asked for a breakout of, what was it, the
Software, like the
Tax
technology
efforts.
stuff, yeah.
Yep.
anything else? Okay. Great, thank you for those explanations. Next thing up is the enrollment policy.
Yes, so I sent that as its own separate document, because having, the enrollment policy, is simply a change in verbiage to one, paragraph at the very end, just to clarify the ways in which LCCA receives withdrawal notification. And so it was a very minor change, but it was just a change in verbiage. We accept verbal or written notification as well as a records request from another school. We often have parents who didn't want us to proceed with withdrawal proceedings, but we received a records request from another school, which is a formal notification that a child is withdrawing, and we are obligated legally to act on a records request from another school. So we wanted to try to be even more clear in our enrollment policy, so people know if you call another school and initiate enrollment there, and they give us a records request, no student is allowed legally to be enrolled in 2 different schools simultaneously. So a records request triggers a withdrawal. And so that is the update in that final paragraph to try to be more proactively informative, to keep parents aware of what they're doing when they're investigating their different options. They wouldn't want to initiate a records request if they weren't really intent on withdrawing and were just sort of seeing what options are available to them. So that is the only change in the enrollment policy there, and I'll simply ask for your approval next month on that. The next item on the agenda is the 3rd to 4th grade promotion policy.
Can I ask you just one question on the enrollment?
Sure.
Just, so are we letting, besides relying on the enrollment policy, are we like communicating with parents to make sure they know, like in the rear and other things, like including aspects considered withdrawal? Is there other ways besides knowing this or seeing this that we're communicating with them so they know they're doing this?
Our reviewer really isn't necessarily the opportune communication to highlight withdrawal procedures, but our registrar in our enrollment office, there's emails, there's notifications, there's phone calls. So yes, we're absolutely on top of making sure. But in this case, we're looking for where else could we possibly put this that anyone would be aware that a records request is a
On the
withdrawal.
website?
This is on the website, yep,
Yeah, I just want to make sure, because some
Yeah.
people may not what that
right,
is.
right.
And then like the proposed changes for like the uniform, the other stuff we're gonna go over, like how is that communicated once it's adopted? How is that communicated out?
I push everything out in like a return to school welcome
Got it.
information.
Okay.
Oftentimes I put the uniform policy out as soon as I can because we do like a uniform exchange sale. The
Mhm.
Legacy Committee
Mm-hmm.
facilitates where people can donate the ones that don't fit and you can come in and buy
Mm-hmm.
replacement uniform things. And so I try to get that policy out as quickly as I can right away. Beautifully this year, there's very little change to it other than 6th grade changes
Right.
their tie.
Yeah.
So, yeah. May I move on?
Yes.
Good,
yes.
okay. So the 3rd to 4th grade promotion policy is in the handbook, but I pulled it out in isolation as well for you because this is a requirement of the Act 20 rules and literacy reading policy that was enacted just within the last year. So they require an official 3rd to 4th grade promotion policy. It is linked within the Greater Family Handbook, but I wanted to draw your attention to this as it is simply a requirement and an addition to the handbook, and I wasn't sure that my link would work, so I sent it to you as an independent policy as well. But when you move to approve the family handbook next month, this policy would fall under that because it is within the handbook. But also important for you to realize we are in compliance with the new requirements of that legislation as far as K-3 literacy, reading plans, testing, all of those things. So I just wanted to call that to your attention. It's modeled after a template provided by the Department of Public Instruction with attention to who we are and what else we pay attention to as far as grade level promotion. So that in isolation is not its own policy to approve, it's simply wanting you to be aware that it's there. If you look at the uniform, the uniform policy, I tried to give you an executive summary of any of the changes, but you also have the red line version. As sometimes we just pick up on things like, wow, why did we have it that way? We did not have black as a color option for leggings or socks or tights or for girls, so we just put black in there. Black or navy, you can hardly tell the difference when the little girls are walking around as it is. So it's in there now as an option. Shorts for PE in the middle and high school, we do have an approved uniform shorts now that are part of the requirement. Shorts are come in a variety of sizes and styles, so it works out best for us to have a single approved uniform short that goes with the t-shirt that students are required to purchase for PE. And then we added just one paragraph. We had a paragraph about spirit wear days and a paragraph about casual wear days, but we also have some days in the school year where we throw a theme on there, and there was no reference to any specifications or parameters of themed dress days, so we added that content. Otherwise, the changes are minor. Like I said, 6th grade becoming a middle school gives them a different style tie, and I believe a different style collar on their shirt. But other than that, the uniform policy remains the same. So it should be, hopefully be an easy approval next month. And then moving on to the family handbook, I gave you a summary as well, but you have the red line version if you wanted to go through all of that. I updated my welcome letter at the opening. When I went to change my name from my maiden name to my married name, I thought, no, I'll write a new letter. So I did that. And we are making a 5-minute adjustment to the school hours at West. We had a lot of feedback from parents about the arrival window and maybe the time frame between when they're picking up their East kids and picking up their West kids and waiting and et cetera. So we will start classes at West next year at 8:10 and dismiss at 3:24. So we just shifted everything earlier 5 minutes. And it shouldn't be a problem. The students are arriving at West earlier than that anyway. Tree of Life Learning Center is the daycare facility that runs out of the church next door, and they provide to our families the option for after-school care, and they requested an update to the text that they submit, so I did update that at their request. The extracurricular eligibility or enrichment eligibility, there was some nuances in the verbiage in the enrichment section and the verbiage in the athletic section, so we simply matched that up. We added a reference to artificial intelligence or AI in the cheating and plagiarism section. I'm making note here that I am just confirming with legal counsel that our section that references bullying is appropriate and still up to date in what we have included. We did include a statement that upper school students will not be allowed to sell snacks, drinks, or other items to one another for personal profit at school. We removed.
Yeah, buddy,
Very
entrepreneurial.
enterprising.
It's very distracting, so we're gonna put a limitation on that. We removed reference to the Legacy Committee. The Legacy Committee is, I'm sure you're aware, our parent volunteer organization that is its own separate nonprofit organization. So we removed reference to it from our handbook so that there was no confusion about the separation fiscally there. And the language to match the enrollment policy that we just discussed. The enrollment policy on a single document goes on our website. That same enrollment policy is included in the family handbook as well. Randy, to your point of making sure we have it in a variety of places for parents to see, we just made those same updates. And then again, the enrollment policy I already pointed out in response to Act 20. And then there were just some clarifying information when we read it again and again and again. We think, we can say that better. We can improve the clarity of that so there's less questions regarding our admissions and enrollment process. So we made some minor adjustments there, not to content, but just verbiage and flow. So on the whole, there's very little change to the family handbook as well. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to address those, but next month, hoping that we would receive your approval to move forward with that so we can disseminate it to families in July.
Any questions, further comments from the board?
Pretty straightforward. I appreciate your summation, Paige. I am very pleased that you're including AI verbiage in the handbook. It is a huge, we have multiple clients in education. It's a huge issue, and a lot of schools are not taking it seriously. And this goes directly to honor code and integrity and the mission of the school, and it's a very smart and necessary inclusion.
Yes, absolutely. And is there?
Yes, Mr. Violet.
I'm probably a little out of order here because Margaret already gave the head principal's report, but was just curious as to updates on placement for our graduates. I know they all announced what they were doing post-graduation,
Yes.
but I was curious if there's any kind of,
A college acceptance list is coming in the review tomorrow.
okay. And I know, maybe it was about this time last year, there was some feedback from parents about concerns about not having honors classes and AP and that type of thing. So I think, that kind of information is somewhat relevant.
The number of
that.
students who took an AP test and the tests that they took just went out, or is going out, what's today? Wednesday. I think it goes on Friday
Okay.
in the newsletter that goes to 7th grade families and above. 7th upper school receives a newsletter from the college admissions counselor.
Okay.
And 9 of our students took AP tests, and the list is, I think there's 10 or 11 different tests that they took.
Okay.
So we're informing parents that our partnership with the area schools that, we're willing to have our students take the AP exams at their locations worked out beautifully. All the students who wanted to take an AP test were able to do so. And we facilitated the AP Latin test ourselves in-house.
So just for clarification on that, so we don't have AP tests per se here. The
We
students have
give
the regular
the AP Latin exam ourselves. We don't have AP courses.
courses, right?
That's
So
correct.
then our students go take the test.
They can still take an AP
In the
test,
area, and then
Mhm.
that would help for their college
possibly.
admissions.
Yeah.
Do we have, I'm curious of that, I mean, do we have really good results?
Oh, I don't.
From those
I
who
don't
took the
have
tests?
I don't have that information.
Okay, is this the first year that
Yes.
they did it? Oh,
Yep.
It's fascinating, okay.
And to provide context,
Yeah.
I don't know exactly when it was, but at a board meeting sometime in 2024, and maybe a series of board meetings, there was some feedback from parents about desiring that we have AP courses, as I recall.
Mm-hmm.
And
No.
also
Classes are.
AP
No,
tests.
just the
Just
test,
the test,
not the
okay.
classes.
And also that we designate certain classes as honors
Mhm.
relative to, not honors, maybe, so there was
I
some
would
discussion.
clarify that there has been some communication as to why we don't offer AP courses, as well as communication about why we weren't offering AP exams. So
I think we're
we
maybe confusing two
have
different
addressed
topics.
both of those
Yeah.
things.
There was the AP tests, and then there was the designating
Okay.
H for honors instead of his.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so I may have confused on that, but
It's okay.
there was quite a bit of feedback on that topic, and then, that it would hurt ability to, secure scholarship and that type of thing. So, it was an important topic and issue to our community, so I think just understanding that is really helpful, so
Yeah,
thank you.
we're rolling that out in our communications at the end of this week,
Mm, that's fantastic.
tomorrow and Friday.
Excellent.
The summaries helped in your explanations of why we changed the things we did, so helpful.
Great.
as well.
Good.
So two more things, but one more thing on the board development. I don't keep my slide up.
1 second.
I worked so hard on that slide, I want to show it.
Yeah, where do I have that
So
slide?
intuitive. It's on the agenda.
Randy's like.
Oh, is it on the agenda? I'm not logged in.
You're
on
talking about
this.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There it is. This one?
It's coming.
There you go.
That's
The one.
Thank you. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate what we had talked about here, and I just think it's one of those things, if we just talk about it a little bit each time, it'll be helpful. But this was our governance model we were working towards. Last time, we decided rather than working on it in pieces, let's get through strategic planning, let's circle back and finish this and approve it all at one time rather than piecemeal. So that is still the plan. I want to keep working towards it though. So one of the things we talked about assessing and measuring success. And obviously enrollment is one way to measure success in a school. And you can't look at it in isolation. There's context, obviously. There's internal and external reasons for enrollment changes. Some things you can control, some you can't. But one of the things I thought would really be helpful, and now that we have a little bit of history, at least as a school, and every year is different, but rather than, we show the enrollment, we look at it, but to have it in one place now where we can look in one place, okay, here's what it was this year, last year, the year before. So I had put together a spreadsheet of how I thought it might help from a board perspective for us to look at it in one place rather than going back and having to go back and forth, so we can more easily see trends. I told Margaret I had it and I was going to share it with her. I assumed she wouldn't look at it the last week of school anyway. So I will send it to Margaret, and then you can look at it with your staff. And I'm assuming it's information you have. It's just getting it in a format in one place. So completely open to suggestions. It doesn't have to look like that. It's just this is the kind of information I thought would be helpful. So I'll send that off to you. You can look at it, come back with any feedback. But I think having it in one place and being able to identify trends will make things a lot easier for us now that we have some history to look back on. So I will send that to you, and that's a step I thought we could take working towards this model without, working towards it, knowing that we're going to approve it all at one time. We can keep moving in that direction at least. So I wanted to let Margaret know that was coming, and let everybody else know sort of what the plan is, and just remind everybody that we're deferring this, but this is where we're trying to head.
Great.
No questions or comments? Okay, we do have a closed session scheduled tonight, which I will move into that, or, go ahead.
Before you are we closing the public meeting?
We are moving into closed session, then we will move back to open session and vote on the, so the closed session is to consider compensation and contract for the head principal. So we will come back and vote on that in open session after the closed session.
I just then, with the board governance model, which I love what you're doing, but going back to all the changes in the voting that's gonna occur next week, or next month, I just wanna notify my fellow board members that I will not be at next month's meeting. And I do apologize. So far, I'm in support of all of these modifications and changes, edits, those kind of things and everything as we've discussed here, but I'm not able to change what I need. It just can't be at next month's meeting, so my apologies to my colleagues here, and to let you know.
Okay, understood.
So it's not a surprise to anyone.
Thanks for the advance notice, and if you have any comments when you look through the items, let us know, so we can address them. All right, good. So would anyone like to make a motion to move into closed session for statute 19.85 subsection 1 paragraph C to consider the contract and compensation of the head principal?
I'll make that motion under same statute, 1985 sub 1 sub C, to consider the contract and compensation of the head principal.
A second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to move into closed session. Is there any debate? Okay, the question is whether to move into closed session per statute 19.851C. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 And opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is carried.
Did you